Let's breathe together. How many people are committed to dwelling in the land of plenty this year? How many people have already started? Feel like you're already there? That's wonderful. How many people just stopped by for a little while? You got to dwell. You got to set up residency. You can't be a snowbird. You got to dwell in the land of plenty, and that's what we're doing throughout the year of 2019. We are really anchoring our consciousness because land is our consciousness. And the land of plenty is a place where there's an abundance of everything we need to flourish, to prosper, to thrive. And that's where we're going to dwell. We're letting go of lack and limitation forever, right? Yes. Are you ready for that? Yes. Yes. Let it go. We've had enough of that consciousness of lack and limitation, that consciousness of not enoughness, that consciousness of smallness, that consciousness of limitedness. And we want to move into that place of limitlessness. And that is the place where God is, because God is limitless. God is all there is. And so when we move into that place of consciousness where we allow our consciousness to become a dwelling place for God, then that's how we can begin to dwell in the land of plenty, because our consciousness has to be a dwelling place for the all that is, a dwelling place for plenty, a dwelling place for limitlessness. And so that's what we are continuing to work toward and work through, and continuing to become that place and space through which God can just be all that it wants to be through each one of us, each and every moment of each and every day. So I'm going to invite you to breathe again with me. And you know, this month our theme is outrageous abundance. Outrageous abundance. Not just outrageous abundance. It's outrageous abundance. Think about that. Outrageous means startling, bold, a whole lot of. That's the kind of abundance we want to experience, outrageous abundance in our lives. Abundance being defined as, or being measured by not what comes in, but by what flows over. Let me just say that again. Abundance is measured by not by what flows in, but by what flows over. Abundance is measured by not what flows in, but what flows over. That overflow is what abundance is. And we want our overflow to be so great that it becomes outrageous. Outrageous. And when we have outrageous abundance, an abundance of good in our lives, an abundance of what we want in our lives, then we get to share it. We get to spread it around. We get to not only have enough for ourselves and more than enough for ourselves, but we get to share and to make sure that there's an abundance of everything for everybody. That's the dream. That's the dream. That's the goal. That's the vision. It's for everybody to have more than enough. And so that's where we want to live. That's where we want to abide. That's where we want to dwell, in that place where there's more than enough. My topic today is emptying our storage bins. This one is for me. I'm just going to share it with you. But it's really for me. Emptying our storage bins. How many people have storage bins outside your house? How many people have more than one? How many people have had them for a number of years? How many people know what's in their storage bins? Oh. I've had storage bins for years, and I have moved I've moved across country 5 times, and each time I've moved, the moving truck had to go to the storage unit first and pick up stuff, then come to the house and pick up things, and then when I moved to the next city, they dropped things off at storage first, and then they dropped off the other things at my house, because there always had to be a place for my stuff. And then my stuff stays there until I get ready to move again. And then the moving truck comes and picks it up and moves it to the next place, and then takes it to the next storage place. And so my daughter and I have been saying for years now, since we've been here in Phoenix, and we decided to consolidate our 3 units of storage units, and we have a big storage unit now, and our goal this right away our goal is to find out first what's in storage. That's the big thing, finding out what's in there. And then deciding what we're going to do with it, what is necessary for us to keep. And if we don't know what's in there, is it really necessary to keep it? And then be willing to get rid of it. Now, I don't know if you can relate to what I'm saying, but that's how our storage units go. When I moved to California, about 15 years ago, that was one of my trips to California, one of my moves to California. When I moved there, when the moving truck, my things had been in storage from April, and they brought things to me in June. They put them in storage in Cleveland, and then I moved to LA, and then I moved to Santa Cruz. And then in June, I was ready for them to bring them out of storage there and bring them to me. So they stopped at my storage unit in Santa Cruz. And the last thing the mover took off the truck was a big garbage bag, and written on the side of it was trash. And he said, "Is this really what's in this bag?" And I said, "I have no idea." And when I looked in it, it was trash. And I had paid a mover to move it across country and to store it for 90 days. That's not cool. That's when it's really time to clear out your storage bins. So I make sure, I don't know what's in the storage unit that we have here now, but one thing I'm trusting that there's no trash in there. I'm trusting that we got all that cleaned out. But the important thing is, to recognize that when we want to be a dwelling place, our consciousness to be a dwelling place for God, there has to be a place for the flow to happen. And when there's so much clutter, in our lives, there's no place for flow. There's not room enough for flow. When there's not room enough for flow, God is the flow. And so when there's not room enough for flow in our lives, there's not room enough for God. And when there's not room enough for God, there's no room for us to dwell in the land of plenty. It's real simple. And so there's so many things that clutter our lives, in addition to physical clutter, and we all have enough of that. But there's mental clutter, there's emotional clutter, there's spiritual clutter, there's financial clutter, there's relationship clutter, there's all that stuff. And so what we want to do is to look at, okay, what can we release and let go? What do we need to release and let go? Because when we look at it, we have an abundance of clutter in our lives, right? We have an overflow of clutter. And so the abundance that we want to experience in our lives is the abundance of good, the abundance of things that we want, not an abundance of things that we don't want. We have storage units because we have an abundance of things that we don't want. We also have an abundance of things that we don't want and clutter on our inner being, in our inner being. And that's what blocks the flow. Just like physical clutter can block the flow of energy, block the flow of chi in a room, block the flow of a path to just walk in a physical place when there's too much clutter. That's the way it is in our lives. That's the way it is in our inner lives. And so we have to make sure that we are ready to let go of stuff that doesn't serve us. Let go of those things that don't serve. When you make a lot of changes like we've been making in this community, a lot of clutter builds up. We have an opportunity for holding on to the way things used to be, holding on to things that don't work, holding on to the way we want things to be, even though they can't, holding on to all kinds of stuff, holding on to those things that don't serve us any longer. We do that in our personal lives, we do that in our community lives, we do that in our relationships, we do that in our jobs, in every aspect of our lives. we hold on to stuff. And so I'm going to invite you to do three things. The first is assess the situation. Take an inventory of the stuff that you have. Whether it's physical stuff, that would be a good thing. Or whether it's emotional, or as I said, or mental, or financial, or relationships. Look at the people, places, and things in your life. Are these things of service? Are these things that really support you? Are these things that you need? Are these things from the past? Are these things that a lot of things are going through my mind right now. This book, for some reason, popped into my mind, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Have you heard of that book? The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, I think her name is. But it's really a great way of just getting rid of clutter and getting rid of things that you don't want in your life. And when you, okay, thank you. When you get rid of things we don't want in our lives, then we can just keep on moving forward. But with Marie Kondo's book, I read it, and I started following it, and I found it to be brutal. It's brutal. You have to be really serious about wanting to clear out clutter and wanting to get rid of those things that don't serve you when you really start working on that life-changing, and it can be life-changing. It can be life-changing because it creates a space. When we get rid of all that stuff, look how much space we have. Just think about just in your home, physical stuff. When you get rid of physical stuff, how much space we have. When we get rid of emotional baggage, when we get rid of mental baggage, when we get rid of false beliefs, when we get rid of old beliefs, when we get rid of anger and jealousy and judgment and blame and shame and guilt and all that stuff, we have so much space. We have so much space. And that's the space wherein God can dwell. That's the space wherein God can work in our lives. That's the space wherein we can start to experience outrageous abundance of things that we want in our lives. Outrageous abundance of the good in our lives. That's what we can do when we really start to take an inventory of the stuff that we're holding on to. Does this serve me? That's one of the things that I think that's really the key word in that book, the Tidying Up book. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. If it doesn't bring you joy, everything you keep, make sure it brings you joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. How many people can do that? I didn't see a lot of hands. I didn't raise mine either. You know what just crossed my mind? One of the things I have in my storage unit that I know that I have that's been across country many times is a typewriter. I can't tell you why I still have that typewriter. It's just that every time I see it, I can't let it go. It's like I just hold on to it. This typewriter, I don't know if I think they're going to come back. I want to make sure if they do, I have mine. If they don't, oh well. But you know, when I was just thinking about this talk this week, it was like, there's so many things, but that typewriter just kept popping up. Like this typewriter, am I going to let that typewriter go? How does it serve me? Does it bring me joy? It brings a lot of memories of not necessarily easy memories, because it wasn't easy always to use a typewriter, because you had to, do all that stuff for corrections and do all that stuff. But that's one of the things I've been holding on to. I'm just thinking about that. So in looking at, the inventory, boxes of Christmas decorations, all that stuff, this is just talking about physical stuff. But when it comes to other things in our lives, what relationships do we have that really are toxic, that really aren't working, that really don't serve, that really don't bring us joy? What relationships do we have that don't allow us to have peace in our lives? I love that reading, I seek room for peace. I seek room in my heart for peace. But if we're in relationships that are not working, where there's no good communication, where there's no meeting of the minds, where there's not ease and flow and grace and the presence of God, most of all, in all of our relationships, when we're in those kinds of relationships, is that something we want to hold on to? And some relationships we can't let go of. I mean, like employer, employee, those kinds of things. But then how can I be in this relationship and still have peace in my life? How can I be in this situation and still have peace in my life? How can I still experience love, even though this is an antagonistic relationship, an antagonistic situation? How can I be in that place where my consciousness is a dwelling place for God? That means that I got to release something. If I'm in a relationship that I have to be in, a situation that I have to be in, how can I release my judgment about it? How can I release my blame about it? How can I release my criticism about it? How can I release my guilt about it? How can I release whatever it is that isn't serving? That's what we have to do. That's the number 2 thing, starting to release. First we're assessing, and then we're starting to make an elimination list. Make an elimination list. What do I need to eliminate from my life? What do I need to release and let go? Just old ways of thinking, it could be. What do I need to do to change my mind? Change my thinking about something. Change the way I view it, the situation. To change the way I interact with others. Change the way I interact with myself. All of these things are really important when it comes to opening our hearts, to clearing out our storage bins. St. Augustine said that God is always trying to give us something, but our hands are too full. God is always trying to give us something, but our hands are too full. God is trying to give us something, but our hands are too full. And I believe that God has already given the gift. The only gift that God's going to give us has already been given. And we have to open up to reveal the gift. We have to open up to experience the gift. God's just constantly being itself, and God is givingness itself. And so that givingness is always in operation. That givingness is always having this kind of forward movement, this kind of expansive movement, this kind of movement of growth, this kind of movement of evolution. And we can be in the flow of that to the degree that we're open to it. And so that's what we want to do. We want to be in a place where we can eliminate those things that would block the flow. And clutter of any kind blocks the flow. Old bills, old debts, old issues that need to be forgiven. We did a forgiveness exercise here the last Sunday in the year. I don't know how many of you still have your little white rocks to remind you to practice forgiveness daily. That's a part of this clearing our storage bins. Practice forgiveness daily. Practicing it daily. Releasing and letting go, because unforgiveness, it's like holding on to a debt. Having someone's indebted to you. It's all a part of the same thing. It's clutter. It doesn't serve us. Let's let it go. It's time to move forward. It's time to move on. It's time to be open. It's time to be receptive. It's time to fly. It's time for us to fly. That's what we can do when we dwell in the land of plenty. We can fly. The third thing I want you to do, in addition to assessing and making an elimination list, is really do the brutal thing of letting it go. That's the hardest part of this exercise, is actually letting it go. Like that typewriter. every time I think about it, I get a little clutch. Like, oh. And I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to let you know when I do. Oh, boy. I know my daughter's probably watching online, and she's probably jumping up and down because she's been trying to get me to get rid of that typewriter for years. I'm going to let that typewriter go. And so many other things that don't serve. But that's really a brutal process. It's a brutal process. One of the things that I'm thinking of in the book, Tidying Up, one of the first things she tells you, she gives you like a roadmap of how you should start in the process that you go through. And one of the first things is to gather all the clothes in the house and all of them go on the floor. And then you look at them piece by piece and decide what brings me joy. I never quite got that far, and that's the first exercise. And you know why? Because the thought of putting all that stuff on the floor and then getting tired or not wanting to clean it up, I just went through, that's just an excuse. But that was my reasoning for not doing that. So I jumped around in the book. I didn't follow the directions. I skipped that part. But I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to really try it. I'm going to really try it. Because I'm going to really try it because, there are hard things to do it's hard in every area of our lives. There's something we don't want to get rid of. There's a process that we don't want to go through. We're afraid we may get tired before we get to the end of it. Or we may just give up and say, oh, I don't want to do that. Or just not be really brutally honest about it. Does this bring me joy? And I know that half the clothes in my closet don't bring me joy because not only they don't fit, I don't even know what's in there, half of it. So how many of you feel the same way? Not only about clothes in the closet, but whatever else that we don't even know. We don't even know about. These are the things that block the free flow of spirit. These are the things that keep us from living in that overflow. And that's where we want to be, in that overflow. That's what abundance is all about. That's what outrageous abundance is all about. Living in the overflow, in God's overflow. If we know how much God gives us, that is sufficiency. When we have enough, that's sufficiency, and we know how much that is, just think about what the overflow looks like. Think about that which flows over in our lives. And it doesn't have to be material things. An abundance of health, an abundance of wealth, an abundance of friendships and good relationships, an abundance of the opportunity to practice the presence of God and to experience the presence of God in our lives always, and to consciously experience it. To consciously know that we walk in the love of God always. To consciously know that we are made in the image and likeness and out of pure spirit, and that we are forever being that place through which God can just operate, through which God can move, through which God can act. Because that's the only way God acts, is through us. God works through us. God works through an open heart. And God can't work through an open heart if the heart isn't open. God can't work through a closed heart. It just goes until it finds another opening. That's the way life is. It just keeps flowing, keeps flowing. It's always seeking an opening. And if we aren't that opening, it keeps going to the next opening. And we wonder how some people prosper and others don't. As I said last week, we hold the key to lack and we hold the key to riches. It's the same key. Let's take a breath on that. It's the same key. It's the same key. Another thing I said to you last week is that prosperity is living and thinking, is a way of living and thinking, and not just money and things. Poverty is a way of living and thinking, and not just the lack of money and things. Same thing, it's about consciousness. It's all about consciousness. Everything is about consciousness. And so for us, I'm saying and inviting us to to allow our consciousness to be that dwelling place for God by clearing out the clutter, clearing out that which would block that alignment that we always are seeking to have with God. Clear it out, let it go. If it doesn't serve you, if it doesn't bring you joy, if it doesn't bring you peace, if it doesn't bring you unity, if it doesn't bring you prosperity, if it doesn't bring you the qualities of God that we are always seeking to express, let it go. It's time to let it go. That's the only way we can dwell in the land of plenty and experience outrageous abundance in our lives. And that's what I'm inviting you to do today, to make the commitment to clear out the clutter. That's what emptying the storage bins means. Clear out the clutter. Clear out the clutter. Starting now. Starting now and working on it diligently every day until it's done. And you know what? Some things will be easier to let go than others. Right? Let's take a breath, because a lot of you are holding your breath right now. Like right over here. When we're doing, a little bit at a time, or you can do it, or you can be brutal. You can take all the clothes and dump them on the floor. And then go get a hotel room. I'm not going to do that. Let's try it, guys. How many willing folks do I have here? Yes, let's try it. Let's start to clear out the clutter. Let's clean out these storage bins of all kinds in every area of our lives. Let's really assess the situation and see where we're holding on to that which doesn't serve, or that which is outdated, or that which is not coming back any longer, or that which blocks. Let's assess that, then let's just decide to brutally eliminate it. Go through the process of letting it go. And then watch our lives take off, because there's so much space for God to just show out in our lives. And that's what we want to have happen. So let's take a breath as we just turn within in this moment. Just turning within to that place where we just know and sense and feel the presence of God. Just recognizing that there's only one power. There's only one presence. There's only one life. There's only one mind. There's only one breath. There's only one activity. It's all God. By any name you choose to call it, it is the source of our being. Only one. That one is my very life. That one is the life of each of us here this day. There's nothing that can separate us from this one that is our very life, except our sense of separation. And so by the word that I speak this day, we release our sense of separation from God and allow ourselves to move into the allness and the fullness that is God. Just allowing ourselves to be in this presence, present in this presence right here and right now. And it is from this place that I speak the word for each of us this day. Speaking a word of release and letting go. As we release those things that don't serve us, we release those things that are outdated, we release those false beliefs, those old beliefs. We release people, places, and things that would block the flow of pure spirit in our lives as our lives. We release those things that block us, that keep us from having room for peace and love and joy and harmony and balance and perfect health and wholeness. We clear out those storage bins and allow them to be filled with the presence of God. How awesome it is to be in the flow. How awesome it is to experience this flow that is God, knowing that this flow is that healing presence of God that heals broken hearts, that heals pain in the body, that heals anything that needs to be healed is healed by that healing presence of God. And we just allow it to have full sway within us this morning. As I open the circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak them silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, knowing that God is in the midst of every circumstance, every situation, every event. Whether we see it or not, whether we believe it or not, does not change the fact that God is everywhere present. Healing is happening everywhere. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for the perfect manifestation of this word spoken here this day. Thank you, infinite presence, for the love that we experience and that we share. Thank you, Divine Mother, for the blessings of our lives and the blessings that we are to life. Thank you for everything. I just allow it to be now. And so it is.